Yeah, anybody that wants to get like just a good overview, I definitely recommend reading The Devil Wears Dashikis. You know, this is written by people who left the organization and describe it. Basically, it sounds like they say like many details of daily life at the core of the Black Hammer organization sound unbelievable, like a bad movie script around a new age cult from the 60s, only updated with Gen Z communist slogans and some of the worst features of left Twitter. But that's only because of the dramatic bent of Commander-in-Chief Ghazi, who seems to know no limit when brutalizing, quote, comrades with tested cult techniques, as long as it means more clout, more money, and a good show for the tube. This is bizarre. For example, there are reported soul contracts that are exactly how they sound and are signed in a special room at gunpoint. Legal names, addresses, workplaces, social security numbers, all are extracted by the same violent means, since owning somebody's soul is not enough. There's exploitation of members' sexuality for financial gain and to build up the org's membership, known in cult studies as flirty fishing. There are shroom-induced journeys in the, quote, spaceship, a room where live-in cult members receive mandatory instruction in the commander's plagiarized and disordered worldview. There are hallucinatory camping trips to Hammer City in the Colorado Rockies, smeared across with hunger and frostbite, with poisoning, with gun threats from whites, and all of it inspired by naive group screenings of Wild Wild Country on Netflix. I guess they like watched that, and he got like inspired by Wild Wild Country to be like, I want to do what Rajneeshi did.
Yeah, exactly. He would make them watch like screenings of Wild Wild Country as like a model, apparently. But this is, you know, like a interesting thing. You know, they're talking about this article, you know, talking about like his revolutionary background, you know, how he was in the, like what was mentioned in the question, like the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. This, you know, pictures from the Smile Tone blog. You know, this is Smile Tone, Romaine's previous online persona, a driven yet spastic and unappealing YouTuber, an aspiring actor who was based not in Atlanta but in Hollywood. Pictures from the Smile Tone blog depict the lifestyle of a pseudo-celebrity in Hello Kitty glasses, a person who feels entirely at home with the rich and powerful glitterati, who is more than comfortable in all-white spaces. Mansion parties schmoozing and run-ins with celebs take up most of the blog's space, which spans from 2011 to 2013. That is, through much of Romaine's mid-20s, based on their real age as established above. So I guess they lie about
that. They say they're younger than
right.
they are, yeah.
Of course, yeah. So, yeah, anti-colonial activist Ghazi Kodzo in their mid-20s, gushing over the mansion party they put together with their boss, who runs the Blaze modeling agency. All right, so Wednesday night, as some of you may or may not know, I don't know how you don't, I've been talking about it forever, I was on TV. So my boss and I put together a little party, it was a huge party, at one of her friend's mansions in Beverly Hills. It was lavish. I'm gonna stop talking and start posting pics, because that's what y'all want anyways, LOL. So yeah, there's just like pics of him like snuggling like a bunch of like rich white women at this party.
Yeah, he's like hanging out with models and
posting picture inspirational quotes from Winston Churchill.
Winston Churchill, if you're going through hell, keep going.
Yeah, I bet he believes in that. Drag.
Hadn't discovered the Little Red Book yet, apparently. It says this bougie blog tells a very different story from the African fundamentalist journey on Wikipedia, I guess, where it was claimed that the entirety of Ghazi's political work prior to Black Hammer revolved around anti-colonialism, and that they began sharpening their political skills and outlook in their early 20s. Yet this would mean that by the time of the Mansion Party, Ghazi was already an experienced anti-colonial activist. In that case, we would have to believe that an African revolutionary was coordinating Beverly Hills mansion parties with their ex-model boss, then squealing because it landed them on TV. That this activist somehow felt that imperialist America is blessed because their YouTube views have grown. Unless Smile Tone was the spook who sat by the mansion door, this Wikipedia entry is clearly a tissue of lies. I think, didn't it say there like that he brag at some point that his dad was like friends with George Bush? I think he did, like that, on his blog.
I would believe it. Yeah,
I think he wrote that on his blog. There it is. Okay. Maybe the lies can be excused as the products of simple embarrassment. Blah, blah, blah. A revolutionary who cannot be honest about their age, their prior locations and activities, or their real level of political consciousness before joining any movement is easily an agent for chaos. They could be a police or Fed plant. They could be a con artist looking to bite strategies and slogans and claim them as their own. They could be lying on their age to more easily manipulate young folks for any number of unsettling reasons. They could be covering up histories of abuse or wrecker activity in other cities and states in other years or decades. But there are still more dangers locked in that back room with old Smile Tone. For instance, there is the testimony from several former Black Hammer members, including both Savvy and Gia, hopefully I'm saying that right, that within the organization, Ghazi would openly discuss their former life as a, quote, Hollywood pimp, less glamorously an exploiter of others' sexual labor. Then there is Romaine Sr.'s bourgeois class position and dangerous ties to the state. The fact, as Ghazi sometimes boasts with typical lack of awareness, that, quote, my daddy is friends with George Bush. This should be a highly alarming claim to any security-minded organizer with past or present ties to Ghazi's activities. So, yeah, I mean, he eventually kind of put himself into various, like the African People's Socialist Party and other groups like that in, like, the 2010s after his Hollywood escapades. But then he, like, broke off from it sounds like he did a bunch of, like, wrecking, splitting behavior and then claimed all those people were, like, COINTELPRO. And I'm not saying definitively. I don't know enough about the groups that he, like, joined and attacked to know whether they were or they weren't, but he's like when he sounds like fucking COINTELPRO. I mean, and says he was a
like
pimp and a modeling agent.
Some of the stories like about like being inside like the like Hammer City and like all that stuff are like truly insane.
Those do feel like Jonestown.
Absolutely not. Yeah, it's borderline Jonestown stuff, like the gun stuff. Like I'm trying to find like that chapter of this. I remember like reading this and just being like agog at like how deep it got. Maybe it was in part 2.
No, there's like you know, mushroom trips. There's kind of like, you know, restricting people's food and sleep and making them work like nonstop. He encourages members to set up OnlyFans accounts and then like divert all the money to the organization. So he's almost like cyber pimping out like, you know, usually like younger members and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, and then just a lot of like threatening,
doxing.
He
encouraged people to start OnlyFans and stuff. Like, and you know, he just wanted to like buy like weed for himself. Like, this is outrageous. The hypocrisy in the Black Hammer organization truly has no end. It includes use of patriarchal forms of sexuality and objectification to recruit new members, even going so far as to suggest you create an NSFW OnlyFans account to fund the cult. Ghazi would never outright say they want someone to do sex work, but he would say that people should make an OnlyFans and do sex work to fund the organization under their own consent, she said. Savvy echoed this, saying that the organization outreach took shape in the form of dressing up provocatively and going out to clubs and bars in Atlanta. Ghazi encouraged cult members to flirt with the public to recruit members, as well as purchase marijuana for them. Initially, Ghazi did not have access to the Black Hammer's accounts, which were held in trust by the Office of Economic Development. However, as the org grew and Ghazi's power expanded within it, they would use their stooges in the Ministry of Defense to change all that, forcing the ICC to hand over the accounts at gunpoint. The picture that Savvy paints here is of a fairly sophisticated racketeering operation held up by a highly authoritarian cult structure whose supreme leader identified their own interests as with those of the organization. Black Hammer took extraordinary members to make young people fully dependent on the org, ostensibly to achieve a post-colonial utopia, but really to draw in more dollars for the avaricious leader. And the biggest financial draw, the one that energized most of the membership and unaffiliated Black and Third World people fed up with Corona and cops and landlords, was Hammer City, the land for which was falsely advertised as being purchased in Colorado in early May 2021. So to raise even more money before the land purchase was finalized, Black Hammer began posting videos and uploading photos of camping expeditions on the rich soil of their patch of land in the Colorado Rockies. According to Savvy, the reality of the Hammer City, Colorado was less like a Black utopia than an episode of Black Survivor. I went to the last trip to the land before we lost the land. I was staying with the North Carolina chapter at the time. I got off the plane at 11 p.m. By 3 a.m., I had to be back up so that we could make the 6-hour drive up to the mountain. As they got closer to the site, the riders were blindfolded, reportedly for security reasons, but probably so the surrounding area could not be memorized in case an escape was made by foot. Once they arrived, Savvy discovered that Ghazi's dictatorship over the colonized was only a poison-induced fever dream. We almost died on the land, Savvy claims with a hint of exaggeration. I thought they packed up everything. We were supposed to have all kinds of supplies for living out there. We got out there. We didn't have enough firewood. We didn't have water. We had to go to a hotel room to get some water. We didn't have enough food, so we had to go down to the bottom of the mountain to get food the third day. We didn't shower for 5 days. Savvy had regretted that Hammer City land purchase was for territory in the Rockies because the original plan had been for a plot of fertile land in the more inviting climate of Florida or in Georgia. Instead, she found herself 10,000 feet in the air in the most extreme climate I've ever been in my life. It was scorching hot in the day and deathly cold at night. According to Savvy, she suffered frostbite from exposure to the night air due to the lack of firewood and adequate camping equipment. But her worst affliction was due to the unresearched suggestion approved by Ghazi that the hammers substitute mugwort for firewood. Savvy was told that mugwort had spiritual properties, that burning it would induce powerful dreams, according to unspecified indigenous medical knowledge. This was the part of the story that I thought was going to be the most crazy, but it's not even. Instead, the hammers became frighteningly sick from handling and inhaling fumes from the poisonous plant, which contains thujone, a chemical compound that is toxic in high doses. Several comrades passed out from the mugwort smoke, including Savvy. One of her hands also developed an allergic reaction, swelling up to 4 times its size. The whole ordeal left her hand with a bleeding, oozing rash for weeks after the trip's end. Even after they returned, though, Ghazi still expected Savvy to perform routine manual labor for the org, her hand still in that condition. Since Ghazi's sadism knows no bounds, once she left the organization, they would post a picture of Savvy's swollen and bleeding hand on Twitter with none of the above context in order to make fun of her looks. But the most symbolic moment of Hammer City's failure was his inability to defend its people from the threat of armed whites. One day, while they were cooking a meager breakfast and discussing Mao, an older white man with a sawed-off rifle pulled up on the armed encampment. The white dude starts yelling about our cars being in the middle of the road. Then he pulls out a gun. Our defense team was soft as cotton. They let him pull out a gun and tell them to put theirs down, and they did. We had to have a huge self-crit after that situation. The security of the entire Hammer City project, in fact, had been compromised by Ghazi themselves, who insisted on letting the whole world know through the internet, flexing that Black Hammer was in San Miguel County, including white supremacists in the nearby town. In one of their patented strokes of unreality, Ghazi decided the best solution to this problem would be to bring in white members of the Black Hammer Reparations Corps to infiltrate the nearby town and politically neutralize them as a threat to Hammer City. This strategy, of course, is familiar from the Neo-Sannyasin cult's infiltration of the town of Antelope, Oregon in 1982 in order to overwhelm the votes of its small local population and expand the power of neighboring Rajneeshpuram. This plan was detailed at length in the celebrated Wild Wild Country docuseries on Netflix, which Black Hammer members were bizarrely instructed to watch as political education for the Hammer City project. Ghazi had obviously intended to stay in San Miguel County to wage their own Sheila-style campaign of defiance against county residents. But unlike Black Hammer, the Rajneeshis had millions of dollars, several thousand followers worldwide, and years of experience running an intentional community overseas in Pune, India, going into the Rajneeshpuram experiment. Importantly, too, they had a keen grasp on the niceties of the law. Though Savvy confirms that a down payment on the Hammer City land was made, it was not secured, and the owners decided to pull out at the last minute. At that point, Hammer City had become a highly publicized and illegal squat. This is when the cops got involved and were supposed to be coming to the campsite to remove the hammers by force. In a last display of eccentricity or cowardice, Ghazi decided to retreat into the woods where a makeshift shelter was constructed for them and a few close companions to hide out, while Savvy and the rest of the hammers stood by in the sleeting rain, waiting for well-armed sheriff deputies to arrive. Ultimately, the San Miguel County Sheriff Department chose to expel the hammers less dramatically with a polite yet firm phone call recorded by an officer and shared to social media. So
they moved to a place that had a bunch of like white supremacists, like a rural
nearby,
part of Colorado,
told everyone where they were,
and then got a bunch of like white.
It was also apparently like an incredibly inhospitable environment. That was I remember reading about that. If you saw the videos of them like trying to set up Hammer City, it was at
a level of elevation where like you couldn't really grow any agriculture, so it was like right off the bat it was like it's going to be like self-sustaining, and it's like, wait, why did you guys buy like that's why the land they bought was like so cheap, because like you probably don't have any like water access. There's no way to grow, like no crops will grow up there. It's just like, it just seemed like this thing that was like headed for like failure and like disaster one way or another. But it was briefly, I remember a lot of people saying at the time, like, oh, this seems like Jonestown 2.0. I guess it just kind of fell apart, so thankfully.
Well, that
and then all this stuff started coming out. I mean, he's still
but
going.
Black Hammer
like,
continued. Yeah, like this article goes on to say, in fact, despite all their talk of the colonized proletariat and committing class suicide, Ghazi had all the airs of a Hollywood big shot, treating their staff like the worst finger-snapping celebrity boss. As chief of staff, Savvy had to serve as Ghazi's personal assistant, drug mule, domestic servant, unpaid therapist, and emotional punching bag. In the morning, she was expected to lay out their unlabeled drug pills, bring them water, prepare their coffee and breakfast, create agendas for them, and reach out to comrades they wanted to meet with for that day. I had to carry around their caffeine and shroom pills for regular dosing on my person at all times, Savvy explains. When asked why she uses scare quotes to describe the caffeine pills, Savvy clarifies that these pills came from an unlabeled container so that she doesn't know what they really are.
Oh my God. Wait, hold on a second. Because remember, we talked about Charles Manson. The defense is fed
a regular diet of these pills to keep them in a constant state of sleep-deprived, excitable activity.
Wasn't it like, basically the model that was worked out, like Chaos talks about this, and the Manson family was like the combo of amphetamines and LSD. So it's like they could be taking, it sounds maybe like they were taking some kind of Adderall and then microdosing shrooms every day.
Yeah.
Which, my God, that has become a big thing right now. But like, I mean, that just makes it so much easier. That's such a lubricant to building an insane cult.
Yes,
for sure. Everybody has to microdose every day.
Yeah, and it seems like they were like under the pretense that it was some kind of like indigenous practice of like, revolutionary healing or whatever. They would just like burn mugwort and like pass out. Yeah,
there was a video. Did you remember that video? I linked it in the workflow where he's dancing around with Joker makeup on his face, like screaming about fucking Frank, and then he claimed it was an African ritual. Right, so if you criticized it, you were anti-African. Yeah. But there's like nothing. It is interesting because it looks like that was just a bullshit excuse they said after the fact. But they did say that it was like basically to invoke like an African trickster deity. Which, like, if that is what he was doing, is also not saying, like all African folk deities are, like, sus, obviously. But, like, there are sus ones. Like, that's part of the whole... Like, there are trickster, spirits or, like, people that you could maybe summon. And he seems like quite a trickster himself. And
I don't know, like, what...
I'm sure he doesn't know anything
that, like, I wouldn't put that on any kind of, like, African deity or ancestral spirit, like, at all.
Sure.
I feel like if he's invoking anything, it's, like... the COINTELPRO like djinn or something. Like it's not like, I think that he's like a complete fraud, basically. I'd say that like his knowledge of anything like that would probably be like pretty close to nil. He just seems like an egomaniac, but
this is weird here. It says in part 3, these days BHO is a shivering shell of its old self. Savvy estimates there may be 24 active members in the whole country, a considerable drop from its peak membership of several hundred. The old sources of external revenue have mostly dried up, since everyone in the U.S. left knows what's up with that fool Ghazi now. Most of the remaining membership is concentrated in the Atlanta Hammer House, where Ghazi and their hostages are reportedly on the verge of eviction. In the latest streams, Augustus Romaine looks haggard, confused, angry, and frightened, and they should be. If these accusations are all true, they have left a trail of abuse at least as long as any of the destructive cults that have recently garnered national attention, such as NXIVM or Love Has Won, and they have done so before the really big payday. Now this part's interesting. Each week, it seems, another hostage in the Hammer House manages to escape. Our writers recently spoke with one escapee who claims that they were basically a domestic servant for Ghazi, and Kodzo would punish them for unsatisfactory work by denying them hospital visits, leading to the degeneration of their lifelong physical illness. Another hostage is the child of a former U.S. State Department official. Still another is the child of a prominent Democratic attorney in the state of Kentucky. There we go with Kentucky again. It's like Augustus Housley Stanley the Sixth is like being held hostage.
Okay.
So that's weird. That's weird that he's got some like relatively like because that's an interesting thing about what he did is I guess he alienated a lot of the actual Black and Indigenous people that had joined. Around when they were at their peak, and then he sort of like flipped the script, and I think originally he like banned white people from being in his org, but then I think he started saying, well, like if you can prove you have like Native American ancestry, like Liz Warren,
bunch of money,
and give me money, then I'll let you in. But then he just started surrounding himself with all these white people, like probably naive, like white leftists who,
yeah,
you know, and apparently some from, connected or the child of a former State Department official. So I don't know. It's like Washington kids or, you know, prominent Democratic attorney in the state of Kentucky. So, you know, I mean, again, we get into the whole thing of the online like left being like these are kind of like petty bouge kids that got sucked into the cult and are being held hostage by this maniac.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that's often really who gets sucked into cults. Often, it's like
absolutely.
You want people with like college degrees and like that's what the Rajneeshis did and really like pioneered. Is like they had a pretty like upper middle class, almost like PMC kind of following. And if you look at Nexium, they got both the Bronfman sisters.
Yeah, for sure.
In on that shit,
and like a bunch of celebs. Yeah,
bunch of celebs, exactly. So you want people that have some like social capital or clout or something like that are respected by like wider society, because then you can kind of like you can mold them, kind of get them, you know, make them your puppet, and then send them back out in the world and they can like do stuff for you, like they can be like a Tulsi Gabbard, you know, and like float around like. Yeah, so, I mean...
But I feel like Ghazi ultimately seems like he was dismal at it, though. I feel like he could have built something more sustainable if he were a bit more stable. But, I don't know, maybe it's like maybe it's more of a shitcoat type operation, you know?
Well,
like
okay, I want to bring that... That's
like,
one point I do want to bring up, but like before we move on, is because the basis of his new strategic alliance is literally red-brown alliance with the Proud Boys, their opposition to vaccine mandates. Now, this kind of pains... I was just talking to somebody, to a listener actually, at a party last weekend, and you know, they were kind of bringing up how nobody on the left, like most of the left has completely abandoned, especially like the radical like Marxist left has totally abandoned taking a side, or not even taking a side, but like resisting the whole vaccine mandate, like you're going to lose your job if you don't fucking get the jab, and like trust Dr. Fauci. Like most of the kind of like SocDem left or like DSA left is just like totally on board with that and like totally against like these anti-vaxxers need to fuck up. And this guy I was talking to was saying like that's like it feels like such a missed opportunity. So then it's like I log on today and I see who's the only force on like the radical left that is actually standing up against like vaccine mandates. It's fucking Ghazi, and he's uniting with the Proud Boys. Like, God damn it.
Yeah.
It just felt like, okay, wow, okay, they're shit coding it now. So now like nobody can do that because
maybe it is like all an op to like shit code it. Like it, I mean, yeah, I mean, I will admit that I'm like one of those people who like, even though I am like not, I'm definitely like not about like the mandate. Like I agree with what they said, you know, like what they all said before, which is that like we don't want to mandate it. Although, as I said in our episode, like I get why that gets to people, like that they feel like there's no alternative, like as well. Like I understand that psychology about it, but like some of like I do feel like that there, I mean, maybe it's because of like ideas that have been seeded like within that discourse, which, you know, something that we've talked about in the past, like I as a possibility, like, you know, I find like a lot of the discussion around it to be like frustrating and like just, you know, or like not like effective, or like based on like weird like, you know, just full of like crap about like, you know, like new age shit or like poorly researched stuff, like not really like well grounded like criticism. I think that's like rampant in like the anti-vax, like, or, you know, whatever, the vaccine resistant discourse, in a way where it's just like, you know, there's no sensible voices there, which I do find it to be frustrating. I mean, I find it to be frustrating again as like, you know, also about like the pro-vax, like sort of mindless, like obedience, like amnesia.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say
that there was ever any kind of like, you know,
not to both sides of it, but I feel like at this point, no, because they're really, I mean, I feel like both positions are being like pushed to like the most radical expression.
Yeah, I mean, it might just be
possible.
because like, you know, being on the podcast and everything, like I feel like in terms of what I encounter online, like, you know, I feel like, yeah, like people who I work with, but who I don't interact with very much, ironically, due to like the, you know, the lockdowns and the virus, and like, you know, but like I feel like in general, like people I see online are like more sympathetic to like the anti-mandate position, which like, you know, definitely like I agree broadly with like not wanting the mandate, but I also feel like, you know, there's just a lot of like bullshit that I like see circulating that just like turns me off of
this would be a prime example of that, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Like Ghazi jumping on board with Gavin
yeah,
fucking
exactly.
McInnes. Are you kidding me? And like we have to align with people should align with this is the guy that was like literally like calling Anne Frank a Becky, and now he's like teaming up with like praising Gavin McInnes. Like fuck off, you know, like it's and the idea that somehow like we all have to become reactionaries now because of this one issue and because of like the way the political battle lines have been drawn, that like you can't be anti-mandate without having to make an alliance with like the fucking Proud Boys or Tucker or anything like that.
Talk about like people who must be like, as you said, like they're also cops. Like who the fuck is in the Proud Boys anymore? Like if the Proud Boys were actually like, you know, serious about like their opposition, why would they be like, you know, everyone knows, like as you said, everyone knows what's up with Kadzo. Like it's not just like, you know, that meme of like what the globalists fear the most, like the black guy like fist bumping with the white guy with the Confederate flag or whatever, you know, like these.
Well, that
like,
seems to be where
like
they're at right
Jonestown
now.
cult, like what the hell, like, you know.
But I think a lot of people, what's kind of fucked up is that there's a lot of people on the ground right now that are like leftist type people that are, for a variety of reasons, are, you know, anywhere from anti-mandate to just like this vaccine is like sus, and like I don't trust Fauci, but there's like no organized, like there's nowhere for them to go, and I think maybe they feel like they have to take whatever allies they can get because people are being like locked out of their jobs right now. So it's like, even if it's like reluctant to be like, well, if some Republican asshole governor is gonna like fight the mandate, like I'm not gonna like stop him, you know, but I'm also like not gonna become a fucking Republican just because of that one thing. But like there's just such a gap, I feel like, on the overall like American left to making space for people that are like even though like when I talk to people individually, I think they're much more ambivalent or even hostile to like the mandate thing. But when you get out in any kind of public space or like online,
well, but we forget that like all of the figures who like you would say as like the sus lords of like all this, like Fauci and like even Biden and Kamala, they all said like that a mandate is something that we wouldn't want to have to consider, you know, like that a mandate used to be like beyond the pall, you know, like we.
Oh yeah, they all said they
like,
wouldn't do
hopefully
it.
It wouldn't come to that. Yeah, like exactly, like
we,
you know, or that it would never come to that. Yeah, exactly. They didn't even say hopefully it won't come to that. That was
which
like not really on the
to me that
wasn't
maybe
on the table.
The vaccines don't work very well. You know what I mean? And it's like that's not allowed to be talked about.
Yeah, but like, you know, that's a whole other issue. But I also do feel like, you know, again, it's like riding a car and riding a motorcycle. You know, there's some risk involved like in both. I do think that I am going to like stick to my position that got me in trouble on our COVID episode, that like, you know, even though the vaccine can have bad side effects and like there are, you know, and I again like think that it should be your right to like not take it if you don't want to, like that, you know, I don't think that you should be forced to, like through whatever means are being contemplated, like, or, you know, lose your job or whatever, like, you know, and I don't think like, you know, I don't kind of believe the sort of social like the mysticism like around it of like, you know, it doesn't like quite make sense because obviously the vaccines themselves like don't prevent transmission, so like it, you know, but whatever. Like I do think that the vaccines like aren't, you know, the virus and the vaccines are like both have a potential of danger. I think that the vaccines aren't really like, you know, unless there's an Alex Jones type time bomb, leaving that on the table.
I
like,
just don't. I'm not comfortable saying either way. The fact is I don't know, and I don't trust that if there was a thing that they would tell us, because this whole process is so fucking rigged and like controlled by big pharma, and Fauci is like the J. Edgar Hoover of public health. Like he's bulletproof, and like nobody can fire him. And he set up so much of the ecosystem of like the NIH that like has defined the last 30 years, and that takes you down a whole nother rabbit hole, but like of just like capitalist medicine and like the nightmares it is like generated. And I'm sure we'll circle back and like dig deeper into it. I just think that it's like you hate to see that. Maybe this is a last ditch. Like there's nothing else really. Like they've blown their credibility, the Black Hammer org, like on the left. So now, like for a grifter / COINTEL guy, like the last play you can make is just like team up with Gavin McInnes and like the reactionaries, and kind of like you could see them. I don't know, but like I don't know who's gonna follow him, or like I think he's just getting dragged for doing it.
Well, I think that kind of happened after, like again, like going back to his Barb roots or present. I think it was kind of inspired partially by Nicki Minaj. You know,
true. Sort of, yeah, once a stan, always a stan. Yeah, and I mean, exactly. I thought it was kind of fucked up that Nicki Minaj got like attacked so hard, and like, you know, she has the right to say that her like friend's cousin, like, you know, had swollen balls. Like that's actually a side effect. Like that does happen, not like all the time, but like that is a possible side effect of a vaccine. So like that's the thing. It's like people are so resistant to just like, yeah, it doesn't. You can still make a risk calculation, but like to just deny that it's all good. Like we have the fact that I'm not going to defend Fauci like from like Ghazi and like Gavin McInnes. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to get sucked into that.
Yeah.
As sus as it is that they're teaming up to like fight Fauci, I'm just standing in the like I don't like Fauci for classic like for-profit healthcare. It fucking sucks. Like what everybody believed 2 years ago, you know, when like Bernie was running, everybody remember how everybody was against big pharma and the insurance companies and wanted to remake the healthcare system. Well, we didn't do that. And now the healthcare system has like immensely expanded its control over like our social and economic and like personal lives to like a staggering degree. And everyone's like, yeah, well, I think we just trust the science. And like, it's not political. Fauci, look at him. He's not political. He's just like, he's wearing his little white robe. He just believes the facts, you know, blah, blah, blah. But, you know.
Yes. And I mean, I think that there's like a lot of susness on that end. But I also like, I feel like not only like is the reaction like, you know, is the sort of anti-vax movement like full of astroturfing, but I think that like that astroturfing also cultivates like a lot of bullshit like information. Like I think that there's something like, you know, this is separate from the Black Hammer issue, but I do feel like that there's something about like the dialectic of, you know, having like, I think that, I mean, it makes sense in a way that, like, in order for the mandate to be necessary, you need that dug-in population that thinks they're going to die of the vaccine. I don't think that's generally true. Of course, like, maybe, like, in a rare case, you can die of the vaccine. Like, I'm not saying that you can't. And, like, if you're afraid of that, like, whether rationally or irrationally, I think that is up to you, like, whether you take the vaccine.
Not die, but, like, all kinds of things that could happen to you.
Yeah, exactly. All kinds of bad things could happen to you. But I think that, like, the fear of the vaccine, which, like, does exist, like, for both legitimate, very legitimate, and, like, you know, less legitimate reasons, like, already, I think that that was deliberately cultivated, like, in order to get to this point. You know, that's like
you
my
think they wanted
suspicion.
A certain amount of the population to like dig in their heels and be like, no, and then
I think that was good. I think they knew
them.
That was going to happen already, and that they wanted it to happen more. I think that they like certain people like, yeah, like as sort of like a dialectical strategy, it was encouraged, and like, you know, a lot of stuff like, you know, I definitely don't think that like and different groups were targeted. You know, the New Age people got that it's going to steal your soul. You know, the other people got that it's gonna, you know, like Alex Jones got like 5 years down the line, you're gonna like just suddenly die or whatever. Like other people, different people,
which
like
is probably more grounded, but like I think
he's definitely more grounded than a little vaccine like stealing your soul. Well, very little is less grounded than
or you know the microchip, the most obvious like shit code idea that like, oh, you think there's a microchip in there? It's like, no, I think I might get myocarditis, you fucking asshole. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's like that. I mean, it has
a dual use of like being a shit code, but also like, you know, when people do think that, like they think it's the mark of the beast, like no way they're going to take it. Like the more that people think that, like, you know, the more likely it is that there will have to be like a mandate for vaccines. And then like
you might be onto something
so
with like
much.
the strategy of tension kind of.
And I also think like, well, one of the things that really sort of helped bring me around to that way of thinking was what we read during our episode recently about this, where it was that article, again, it was like about chickens, like, you know, so this is just like, I'm playing fast and loose with virology. I'm not an expert, but it was like about the nature of like leaky vaccines.
Yeah, exactly.
And like how, you know, when you have a population that is partially vaccinated and partially not, that like actually can it can perpetuate a bad pandemic for longer, you know, because rather than like just everyone dying because there's no vaccine or everyone being vaccinated, like, you know, so it's more mild, it's like, you know, in between. And then as a result, you know, or everyone developing natural immunity or whatever because there's no vaccine, whatever you want to say.
True.
Like having one or the other is better at making a pandemic end maybe than, you know, or like the severity of it.
Well, exactly. I think that's definitely a possibility for sure, because what you see right now is like coronavirus cases are like highest in states with like the highest vaccination rates, and
that's
in
something
countries
else
as
I've
well.
noticed too. Like Rhode Island has a super high rate because you have the New England, like, you know, outskirts contingent.
Yeah.
And then you have like the super, you know,
like quadruple boosted city population
Bostonians. Yeah, exactly. So
I think that there does make like it sounds like, to my dumb brain, like it makes scientific sense that if you have a vaccine that like prevents like serious illness but like allows transmission, then it's just like a battleground for the vaccine or for the virus to test out. Like it's, you know, ways to evade the immunity.
Who don't have it, to whom it will, you know, again, this is something that I got like a little bit of pushback on. Like maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people who are vaccinated will be more susceptible somehow. But I think it's also a possibility that like the people who are unvaccinated will be more susceptible to the virus that is being carried around and even like, you know, mutating within or changing in response to the people who are vaccinated.
Like I wouldn't be super shocked if the narrative like went that way after a little while.
Yeah.
Because the other aspect.
Well, I mean, I've
like,
already seen people starting to say like the whole idea of the pandemic of the unvaccinated like is not true. Because,
I heard a motherfucker on. Oh, well, that's good if they say that, because that is like a lie. I also heard but they might be replacing it with something worse. I literally heard some like serious scientist on like one of the cable news networks the other day say, you know, look, this is really now a pandemic of the under-vaccinated. You know, basically saying that if you got those 2 shots, it's not enough anymore. So I think that we might have to start aiming the blame cannon at you guys now, you little assholes who got the 2 shots, but you don't feel like signing up for more. Now you're going to get the shit now after thinking you were safe all year. And I feel like that's going to piss off a lot more people. The people that got 2, and it's like, well, it's kind of on you that your product fucking sucks. At bare minimum, it doesn't do what everyone promised it would do, like Fauci all at the beginning of the year. That like we don't know for sure, but we think it'll block transmission. But if you talk to,
as I've put it, you know, I've tried to avoid saying broken promises to people when I've been kind of expressing these ideas. What I've come up with is walked back assurances. But there were a lot of walked back assurances that were given for sure.
For sure. And if you talk to like big city libs, like people that are listening to NPR every day, like I've sort of noticed this anecdotally and like in the press, there's still a strong feeling that like people have said with utter conviction to me, like, no, dude, like you got to get vaccinated because like you got to get boosted because like it blocks transmission. And you're like, no, it doesn't. And nobody's saying it does, but everyone acts like it does. But if you actually listen to the real words they're saying it doesn't. And if you look at the statistics, like I think there was a study either in Germany or England from July to like November. And I believe at the time they started tracking, you know, it was like halfway through the vaccine drive, they were like, I don't know, 10% of the people in the hospital were vaccinated who had like COVID cases. And by November, it was 89%. So how the hell is that a pandemic of like the unvaccinated? Clearly they're spreading it to each other, right? They couldn't all be getting infected by like that evil, you know, 20% that's running around. Like, but that's what people think, because I think there's been a psychological influence campaign that is like very maybe it's just super overwhelming.
Even the AP, like just today, is saying questioning a catchphrase, pandemic of the unvaccinated. They're trying to walk back the idea of the pandemic of the unvaccinated. We should not partition them as an exclusive problem. They're stigmatize the unvaccinated. We can say that the virus has reemerged in the southern United States primarily among unvaccinated people, but it doesn't mean we have to blame the unvaccinated. Blah, blah, blah. The unvaccinated have an opposition towards Washington, and the more you stir the opposition, the more it convinces them I'm not going to give in to these people, blah, blah, blah. But they said something about how there's also like vaccinated breakthrough cases. Like,
they don't publish those up front on the big ticker on CNN. Like they just, all they have to do is just like lightly conceal a lot of information, and it gives an absolutely warped like interpretation.
Yeah, the only real claim is that the vaccine like protects you from getting it like really badly. It definitely doesn't prevent transmission. It doesn't really even prevent you getting it, because some people do get COVID with the vaccine. I mean, that's why.
Yeah, that's what a breakthrough case is.
You still have to mask up, otherwise that would really not make any sense. So, I mean, that is the claim, which I think probably
that have had that happen
is true, but it's definitely not as effective as they promised, and certainly the result of like, you know, I mean, we just didn't see at all what we were told or what was suggested would happen after this vaccine was generated, and like, I think that there's many factors in that, but also like, you know, it's just that the vaccine's effectiveness like isn't what was promised either. Maybe she's wrong.
For access to the full-length episode, subscribe to the Al-Wara Frequency at patreon.com/subliminaljihad.
Ain't no need of losing your cool. Take her home, brother. Stop acting a fool. Control yourself. Don't jump to conclusion. Don't make it worse on us. Don't lose your cool. We have pride and we have culture. Take it from me, brother. You're somebody too. A man is born, one after the other. His days on earth are few and filled with trouble. Wait, why don't you listen to what I have to say? You're gonna need this advice someday. Do what you ought to do. A tree is known by the fruit. Watch yourself. Don't lose